Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing a comparison between the X-rite or Calibrite ColorChecker Passport 2 versus the DataColor SpyderCheckr. Now, in previous videos I've talked about how important color is and how the ColorChecker Passport can improve the colors that you produce, because most cameras currently on the market interpolate colors, and although it is a great system and a very sophisticated algorithm, it's not perfect, and devices like the ColorChecker and the SpyderCheckr can help minimize some of those issues. So in this video, we're going to compare the two to see which one is in fact the best one that you can buy. In terms of price, both of them are very similar. It does depend on where you're based. In the UK, the ColorChecker is more expensive than the SpyderCheckr. However, if you're in the US, the SpyderCheckr is slightly more expensive than the ColorChecker Passport. So price-wise, it's kind of here and there. They're very similar in terms of price point. So that, I don't think that's a major deciding factor. The biggest deciding factor in terms of how they're designed is the size, because some of you may love the fact that the ColorChecker Passport is tiny. I mean, it's the size of a passport, fits in your back pocket, so even if you're out just shooting with a camera around your neck, it's not a problem for you to have that in your pocket and use it whenever you need. However, the DataColor, it's a much larger device, and although it's much better built, because the build quality on the DataColor is significantly better, the hinge is better, because the hinge on the ColorChecker Passport, terrible. Hate that. Talked about it in the review, but I still hate it. However, the DataColor SpyderCheckr, just much better built. The hinge is a lot better. It has tripod mounting ports, and you can also swap out the cards if one of them gets damaged or they eventually fade, so you're not having to spend the full price to buy a brand new one. However, it is much larger, so it does require you to carry in a bag or a shoulder bag or something to that extent. It's not going to be something you can fit in any pocket that I can think of. So, you know, the size or the portability aspects could be a deciding factor for some of you. However, I will mention that the size of the DataColor SpyderCheckr does mean that it's a lot easier to shoot when you're in the field, because it's a much larger target. You don't need to step in as close, you don't need to kind of crop in as much. It's a lot easier to shoot the DataColor than it is the ColorChecker Passport. The Passport is much smaller, so you need to step in, or you need to basically zoom in quite a lot to shoot it, or crop in quite heavily in post if it's taken a small portion of the frame. So there are advantages and disadvantages on both sides. Personally, I like them both for different reasons. I think that the portability aspects of the Passport is great. However, the fact that it's a lot easier to hold and carry the sorry, not hold and carry, but the fact that it's a lot easier to shoot the DataColor, it just makes things a bit convenient. So those are the major differences in terms of like the size and price and usability and those aspects. However, the main thing I think most people are going to be concerned about is what are the results like, and how do you actually use it once you take the images into Lightroom or whatever software that you're using, and then which one's actually better. So we're going to take a look at a bunch of images in Lightroom on my computer. We're going to compare them side by side. I'm going to show you how to use the software briefly, but I'm not going to really focus on that. The main point of this is the comparison to see which one is actually the better option, and then the results are what we're going to be focusing on the most. So let's jump into Lightroom and let's find out which one is the better color checker between the two. So here we have a few images opened up in Lightroom now, and this first image that we're looking at, this is the control image. So I haven't applied anything apart from the standard Adobe color profile that you get in Lightroom, and other than that, I've just changed the white balance so it matches the rest of the images and applied the lens profile. So you can see there aren't any color adjustments at all on this file. This is basically the standard look that Lightroom will produce. The image next to it, this has had the saturation color profile applied to it from the SpyderCheckr. And what SpyderCheckr does is it actually adjusts the profile, adjusts the colors based on the HSL section in Lightroom. And the way that you create the profile is you have the image of the SpyderCheckr, and you do need to make a few adjustments to the white, to the exposure and the black point, and then obviously adjust the white balance based on this patch. But then after that, you just right click, go on to edit in, and go into SpyderCheckr editing. Now, you will come up with an option which asks you to edit a copy with Lightroom adjustments. You do need the Lightroom adjustments, so you make sure you select that one, not the other two. And then when you click edit, a copy of the file is created in Lightroom, and then you have the grid that you need to line up with the color patches. Once you've lined up the patches, you can pick which one you want. So you want the saturation, colorimetric, or portrait. I tend to go for saturation because it boosts the colors a little bit more than the others. The portrait and the colorimetric, I find it to be a little bit muted. Save to Lightroom and then save calibration. Now, I'm not going to save it because I've already created a number of profiles already. So I've got my profiles over here. I don't need to do that again. With the ColorChecker Passport, it's actually more straightforward because Lightroom, the software, has an export preset, which makes it a lot easier. You simply click on the ColorChecker export profile, change the name to whatever you prefer, and then hit export. And then basically you just shut down Lightroom, reopen it, and you'll have the SpyderCheckr profiles and the ColorChecker profiles in Lightroom. The ColorChecker profiles will appear over here. So you go into Browse, and then you'll have the profiles basically below the Canon profiles. So as you can see, I've got a number of profiles there. And with SpyderCheckr, it appears over here as a user preset. And then when you click on one of the user presets, it basically applies it to the HSL. So I'm just going to undo that now. And that's essentially how the ColorChecker Passport and the SpyderCheckr the SpyderCheckr Passport work. Now, if we compare the standard image to the SpyderCheckr image, you'll notice how the SpyderCheckr image just appears a little bit flat, and some of the tones and colors just kind of appear a little bit muted. So I'm not a fan of how the SpyderCheckr adjusts the colors in the image, even compared to the standard image that you get in Lightroom. And when you compare it to the ColorCheckr image, I think that the ColorCheckr image is actually a little bit better. So we've got the ColorCheckr on the right over here, SpyderCheckr on the left. And if we zoom in, you'll notice how the colors are just a little bit more vibrant, like her lips, her skin tones and everything. They just look a little bit better. Maybe this is just leaning a little bit into the magentas, but I like that. And you can always change that slightly, but I do find it to be a little bit more vibrant. And even in the green tones in the background, the ColorCheckr is doing a better job. So personally, I think that the ColorChecker Passport is a better option in Lightroom. Even if you come onto this image over here, so this image has had the ColorChecker profile applied to it. So I'm just going to go back and forth between the ColorChecker profile and the SpyderCheckr profile. So this is the ColorChecker profile, and now we're going to go into the SpyderCheckr, and you'll notice how the SpyderCheckr is just a little bit flatter. If you just kind of pay attention to her skin tones and everything, we're just going to go back and forth. So I'm just going to hover over it, and you can see how much of a difference it makes. So I find that the colors from the ColorChecker Passport just look better. And even in the background, the blue tones, the green tones, basically everything just looks more vibrant. And I prefer the look of the ColorChecker Passport. Not to mention the fact that it's a lot easier to use the ColorChecker Passport because you simply export and then you don't need to do any adjustments to like the grid or anything. It's really straightforward to use the ColorChecker Passport. I prefer that over the SpyderCheckr in Lightroom. Moving over to CaptureOne, and this is what the image looks like as soon as you import it into the software. And I think CaptureOne does a better job straight in. In my view, it's just a better software overall and in terms of like color management. And when you apply the color profiles, then it does a better job. I just think that the color profile in CaptureOne, because of the way that it's been produced through LumaRiver, it does a better job. Now, if you want to know how to use the ColorChecker Passport and the SpyderCheckr Passport, it's identical in terms of how you use it, but we've done a video previously, so you can check that video out, and I'll link it below. But you can watch that video if you want to know how to use the ColorChecker and the SpyderCheckr in the software. It's basically the same. And if we just go back and forth between the original and what the ColorChecker and SpyderCheckr look like, you can see how it's actually quite a big improvement, quite a big change. Now, you might be wondering why I'm saying both the ColorChecker and the SpyderCheckr, because we're just going back between the default and one of the profiles. The reason for that is because if you just go between, so at the moment we've got the SpyderCheckr applied to it. If you go between the SpyderCheckr and the ColorCheckr, you'll notice that there's virtually no difference at all. The results are completely identical. And the reason for that is because the software LumaRiver is using the same number of patches from both the SpyderCheckr and the ColorCheckr, and it's going to interpret it in the same way. So that means that the results are going to be the same. So if you've got a SpyderCheckr or a ColorCheckr in CaptureOne, the results are going to be identical if you use it through LumaRiver to produce a ICC profile. And because of that, I'm going to say that the SpyderCheckr is a better option if you use CaptureOne, because the SpyderCheckr is just a little bit better in terms of its build, its design, the way that you use it, the customizability of, well, not customizability, but the fact that you can, change the cards if they get damaged, and you've got the option to kind of mount it on a tripod. It's just a better option. It's just a better built device in comparison to the ColorChecker Passport. So yeah, I'm going to lean towards the SpyderCheckr more when I'm using CaptureOne. I just think that it's easier to use, and also the results in comparison to the ColorCheckr, they're identical. So there you have it. That's how both color checkers compare against one another. And I think it comes down to the software that you use. So if you're using Lightroom, then the ColorChecker Passport is probably going to be the better option. It does produce better results, more vibrant results, and the colors just look better from the ColorChecker Passport. The DataColor wasn't that great in my experience, and I tried it on a number of different images. I just didn't find that it did a good enough job. However, if you use CaptureOne like I do, and you prefer to create customized CC profiles, then the DataColor SpyderCheckr, I believe, is the better option. And the reason for that is because the usability is just much better with the SpyderCheckr. It's larger, it's you can swap out the cards if something happens, and you can put it on tripods or light stands. It's just a lot easier to use the DataColor SpyderCheckr than it is the ColorCheckr. I hate the hinge on the ColorCheckr, so if you're using CaptureOne, the SpyderCheckr is the better option. When you create the customized CC profiles in Luma River, the results are basically identical. There's no difference because the 24 patches that it's using between the two doesn't make that much of a difference. I mean, the software and the way that it's processing it, it's practically identical. So I'm going to say it comes down to the software. For me personally, I'm going to be leaning more towards using the SpyderCheckr. However, for anything more meaningful, for anything more significant, there is also the ColorChecker Digital SG, and that is going to produce far better results than both of these combined. So if you want to produce much better looking results, if you want to have more accurate looking colors, then the ColorChecker Digital SG is the way to go. It is more expensive. However, in CaptureOne, it's the same process. You use it in the same way as you do the ColorChecker Passport or the DataColor when it comes to like the software and how you process it. But the results that it produces is much better. So I'm going to be going back and forth between using the SpyderCheckr for just general images and stuff that I'm just shooting, which isn't color critical, or as color critical, I should say. However, for anything more commercial, for anything more important, for anything more significant, I'm going to be using the X-rite or Calibrite digital ColorChecker SG, because I think that's the best option currently on the market. Anyway, just want to say thank you so much for watching our video. If you like this video, hit the like button, please subscribe, share this video, and hope to see you all in the next one. Thank you.